Hey there, men. Welcome to another Truck Talk Thursday episode on the Wolf and Iron podcast. I'm glad to be talking to you guys today. If you're just checking this thing out for the first time, tuning into Wolf and Iron for the first time, or maybe just one of our Truck Talk Thursday episodes and thinking, okay, what is this? What is this all about? There's some racket in the background. Well, I'm actually in my truck, and I'm talking to you guys sort of off the cuff about whatever's on my heart, whatever's on my mind, and I thought I'd have just a way to share some thoughts with you guys that are a little non-traditional when it comes to podcasts, if podcasts have been around long enough to even have a tradition at this point. So we're breaking a few rules here and doing things a little different. Today I want to talk to you guys about defeating the defeatist mindset. And this is just so prevalent. Sometimes we call it learned helplessness. I think that's actually a better way to describe it. And we're going to kind of talk about this in two parts. Hopefully I can get this done in about 15 minutes because that's about as much time as I have before I get to the office. We're going to start out with essentially how the mindset comes about so that you guys can understand what you're up against. And then we're also going to talk about how to crush this thing. It may end up being a two-parter episode, we'll just see. So the defeatist mindset works like this. It really is a learned helplessness. And let's talk about what it sounds like, actually. It usually comes across as some excuses. I can't do this because of whatever the reasons are. My life situation. Life is hard on me. You don't understand my circumstance. I'm different than everybody else. It's easier for other people because they have advantages that I don't have. That kind of stuff. It can also be a little bit more deceptive than that, though. I mean, sometimes it comes across as humor. It comes across as not really a whining kind of, I can't do this, but almost an acceptance of a state of life. Well, this is just the way things are. Or maybe just a dogmatic practicality towards life. Well, it's not practical for me to do X, Y, or Z, so therefore I'm not even going to attempt it. Or, well, here's the famous one. Look at those guys driving that expensive car over there. Don't they know how much it's going to cost when they have to get the oil changed or when it breaks down? And it's certainly going to break down. You know, expensive cars, they don't do very well. And we can really buy into our own BS with this kind of stuff. This is what makes it so challenging to overcome, is that we really become accustomed and really we attach our personality to this idea that we can't, or that we're limited. And it was one of the reasons we call them limiting beliefs. And it's all kind of wrapped up in the fear initially. So let's talk about how these things even come about in the first place. How do we get to this point? Well, when we call it a learned helplessness, I think that helps kind of define what we're dealing with here, because this isn't something that just came about as part of your natural personality. Most likely, there is some reason that you think and you act the way you do, and you learn this either by watching other people or maybe unconsciously as a way to deal with things. So here's how it happens for a lot of people. You go out and you try to do a thing, whatever that thing is. You maybe you're a bit naive about it, but in any case, you fail. It doesn't happen the way you want it to. And it could be any number of things, guys. It could be trying out for the team, right? The football team, the baseball team, the basketball team. It could be, trying to do your best on a science experiment and it just falls apart at the last minute. Or it could be something like just trying to have a conversation with your wife or with your parents or with anybody. It could be trying to lead. Any number of things. Fill in the blank here. You try to do something and you fail. And maybe you try again and again and again and you fail over and over again. Now here's what happens. There's a good chance that your brain is saying, I don't really hate the failure so much. It's not really what gets to me. Everybody fails at all kinds of things. What I really don't like is the feeling that I get when I fail. When I really try hard and it doesn't work out. And when I'm really expecting the best, then I get that pang of disappointment when things don't turn out the way that I want it to, or I get rejected, or whatever the failure feels like. And so here's what your mind does. Your brain says, probably unconsciously or subconsciously, it says, I don't like the way this feels, and I obviously can't control the outcome of the situation. So I try to do a thing, I fail at it, I try it a different way, I fail again. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a scenario in which I don't have to try, and I'm going to come to a place of acceptance about not trying. And the crazy thing is, okay, our body actually produces a bit of dopamine for us. Okay, dopamine is kind of like a reward center type of a reward chemical that our body produces. And a little dopamine shot comes there and it says, hey, that's a good idea. You've thought of some way to control the situation so that we don't experience essentially pain in some kind of way, in the form of rejection or in the form of failure, whatever way it may be. And that dopamine is like a signal to our body that says, you've done a good thing, way to go. It's like getting a doggy treat, right? And this works actually for a while. We can actually put this on for a period of time, and it seems as if we're doing the right thing. And in fact, we can go deeper and deeper into this and really just acknowledge just this state of mind, right? We become associated with our own defeatist mindset. I was talking to some couples not too long ago that had been engaged for a very long period of time. And I don't even know if you can call it engaged when there's no formal date and nobody has a ring or anything like that. But in any case, they had been engaged for a period of time, and they had really kind of bought into the idea that, maybe marriage isn't for them, or it's not one of those things that's that important, or maybe she's got to make the decision when she's ready to settle down, and of course she's probably waiting on him to be more assertive or something like that. But they had sort of become comfortable with this notion that they don't have to move forward, and that marriage is just a certificate and it doesn't really matter anyhow. And you can apply this to any number of things. You try to quit smoking, but you go back to it. You try again, but you go back to it. You try to quit drinking, or maybe pornography, or whatever the case is, and you just can't seem to get over it. And so you give up. You try to lose weight. You can't seem to, you fall right back off the wagon. You're eating like a pig again, right? You go to the gym, you get injured. It seems like every time you try to do something, it just turns out against you. And so we build up this defeatist mindset, and we tell ourselves things like, I'm not a runner. I'm not one of those exercise guys. I'm not somebody who can just quit things. I need, some kind of expensive medication to get me off the cigarettes. And so we have our excuses. We have our learned helplessness. We have our defeatist mindset that sits in. And here's the thing, guys. Once we get that dopamine trigger, something in our body knows that by avoiding things, we get a positive response from ourselves. And so we develop a lifestyle of avoiding things over and over again that are difficult, that are challenging, that may produce the same kind of disappointment feelings that we had when we tried and we failed. And so when we avoid those things, we get this sort of mixed anxiety feeling, right? Like, I'm avoiding it, yeah, but I'm also doing a good thing by controlling the situation. So that's what's going on. We develop this learned helplessness mindset. Now, how do we overcome this thing? Well, one, knowing what you know now, you're armed a bit more than you were before. Instead of just allowing yourself to just kind of go through these things, through these experiences without really knowing why you feel the way you feel. You got to understand this. Your brain has actually been wired by your own decisions to choose the path of least resistance. And it gives you little treats every time you do that. This works for a little while until you get to a point in life where you realize that the avoiding of things has put you in a place that you are the kind of man that you don't want to be. Maybe not in every area of life. Let's be realistic. But in some areas in life, you're avoiding the difficult things that you really need to overcome. You should be taking up these challenges. And so there's another part of yourself now that begins to feel guilty and feel ashamed that you have avoided the difficult things. And I want you to use that. I want you to use that motivation. So you're armed with the tools of knowledge of why your body does what it does, why you naturally or instinctively avoid things. But here's the thing. you can actually build greater and stronger dopamine responses. You can rewire your brain to crave challenges. And the way this works is pretty simple. You don't actually have to go and tackle those gigantic things that you've been avoiding for so long, right? Quitting smoking or losing 50 pounds, whatever the case is. You can tackle the small things. And here's the thing, your body will give you a positive surge, that dopamine, when you challenge yourself to do a small thing and you're victorious over it. And what you're doing here is you're training your brain to crave the things that result in positive outcomes. You see, you get a little bit of a dopamine hit whenever you avoid something, right? Because there's a controlling part there that I've already talked about. You're making a decision that seems like a momentarily positive outcome. But when you've done something that you know is going to have is a true positive outcome, you've decided to do something for beneficial reasons and you follow through on it, and you get that hit of, yes, I'm awesome, I've done this thing. Okay. That's going to help train your brain to crave those kinds of things. And so when you have those difficult conversations, as an example, with your wife or with your coworkers or with your team, and they turn out well, maybe they don't go so well initially, but the end result is something good, you need to celebrate that. Okay? You need to have time where you think, even if it's just 5 minutes alone in your car, even if it's just giving thanks to God, maybe it's celebrating with a run or whatever the case is, however you want to celebrate. You need to fist pump that thing, right? All right. You need to tell yourself that you've done a good job. And this sounds a little cheesy. I know, I get it. But it's going to help your brain to realize that this is the type of reward that it wants, this type of positive experience. And you begin to do these in small things. Now, this could be simply accomplishing the things that are on your list to do by the end of the day. Maybe that's your thing. It could be something as simple as avoiding sugar for one day. Okay, just one day. Choose one thing that you're going to do and do that. Maybe you want to try to kick caffeine. Okay, avoid that for one day. You don't have to do it for an entire month or a week. You're training yourself to have those positive experiences and for your body to really enjoy what it feels like to be victorious in the areas that you've set out to overcome. So get creative with this, guys, whatever it is. Wake up in the morning and just do 25 push-ups, 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, whatever the case is. And have a moment of thanks that you did that you accomplished something successful. Now, when it comes to the big things, you're overcoming some addiction of some kind, or you're trying to get back into the gym for long term, okay? There's kind of something that happens that spirals us back into the defeatist mindset, and that is anytime we fail, we feel like we're not measuring up to our own expectations. And failure could be something minimal. It could be something that everybody else would consider minor. We took a week off because we were traveling, or we didn't eat well this week, whatever the case is. And so it can trigger that sort of, ooh, I don't like this pang. I don't like the way this feels to fail. And so maybe I just shouldn't try, right? It can throw us back into that mindset. But you've got to stop yourself there. And there's something called self-compassion. It's a little bit different than self-confidence or self-esteem, which you guys have heard of. You may not have heard of this term, self-compassion. And this is a way of just being kind of realistic with yourself and kind of honoring the fact that you're a human being and you're not going to do things perfectly and nobody expects you to, and you shouldn't have those expectations for yourself. And this is really going to allow you to be more resilient around your failures and to say things like this. And this is okay to say this, guys. I didn't do so hot this week, but that's okay because I'm going to crush it next week. And that's it. I failed, but that's okay. I'm getting better all the time. Now, this sounds like some kind of psychobabble, self-help talk type of stuff. Well, it kind of is, unless you actually believe it. You see, we unconsciously reward ourselves for doing bad things all the time. To combat that, we have to consciously reward ourselves for doing good things. And we can start small. So that's how the learned helplessness comes about, and the defeatist mindset that comes about with it. You know what might be good is just kind of watch yourself and how you think and how you talk, the words that you use, and see how many times you respond in a negative way, either about somebody else or about yourself or about an upcoming challenge or project or whatever the case is. What are the initial thoughts that come to mind? Are they positive? Are they, okay, here's a challenge, let's crush it? Or is it negative? Now, here's what I'll do. On the next podcast episode, I'm going to talk about how to help other people overcome their defeatist mindset, because I got a feeling that a lot of you guys who are listening to this podcast, you're already overcoming a lot of this because you're in this sort of the self-help, self-improvement mindset already. So now that we're armed with a little bit of information about how it develops, in the next episode, I'm going to talk about how to see that in other people and to help them overcome it as well. I think that'll be good. Okay, fellas, that's all I got for today. As always, I'd love to have your feedback on any of the episodes here. You can head over to our free online Facebook group. Do I have to say online anymore? I think that's kind of outdated. But you can get there by going to wolfandiron.com/thegroup. That'll take you over to our Facebook page. If you're not a member, you'll be asked to answer a few questions there. And because we don't let anybody in, not just everybody gets a pass into our Facebook group. We want to make sure that you're a good fit, that you're a guy of high caliber. So make sure you answer those questions and let us know. What are the things that you're struggling with? What are the things that you keep coming back to that keep showing up in this sort of defeatist mindset, this learned helplessness? And tell me what you thought about the episode. Okay, talk to you guys later.